guys, thank you for joining my Word of the Day Wednesdays. My name is Nicole D. Miller, author of When Love Wins. Yay! It's so exciting to say that. And so weird. I almost chose Stories for the Urban Soul when I was getting ready for this live because I'm just so used to doing that. But this is my debut novel, When Love Wins, and it's a fast-moving urban tale featuring two young women who have a rift in their relationship. They're as different as night and day. You have Ashley, who's the riveting fashionista urban socialite. And then there's Natalie, the more serious conservative faith-based writer, social justice advocate. And there's a rift between them stemming from childhood. Natalie moves in with Ashley as she's recovering from the loss of her mother in hopes of support, only to find a cold welcome from Ashley. However, she does feel spiritually led to pursue Ashley with love anyway. So, to learn more about When Love Wins, you can actually download a free chapter, and the link is on my Instagram page at HTOHB. You can go to whenlovewins.love to learn more about the book and purchase, as we now have launched the presale. All books will be mailed, and the Kindle version will be delivered, as well as the audiobook version, in early April 2023. All right, so let's get started with our Word of the Day Wednesdays. As you guys know, every week I piggyback off of my latest blog, and I do a live just to kind of expound on what I wrote about. So, this week, I wrote an article called Exposing Toxicity, and this was definitely one that was more close to home and personable and emotional. I opened up the blog with sharing about my own experience working in a toxic work environment, and it's so interesting because I've been listening to a lot of podcasts on toxicity and reading books, and one of the podcasts I was listening to, they were sharing about toxic work environments, and I was thinking, I don't think I've had that. I wonder what that is. I laugh because I clearly was in a toxic work environment, and I talk about this in the blog, and it's probably the first time, I'm pretty sure it's the first time that I've shared publicly this work experience that I had several years ago. But basically, I was overworked, underpaid, undervalued. And what I learned in hindsight is like the system that was in place was to keep me from winning. Like it was a lose-lose situation. But because of my personality, being an achiever and a go-getter and a bit of a perfectionist myself, I just kept trying to win. I kept trying to meet this all elusive standard of perfection that did not exist. Until, thankfully, God gave me an out. And it's interesting because during that process of being overworked and undervalued, there was psychological damage that was done in my brain concerning my own work ethic. And I remember talking to my mom about it during that time. She really walked with me through that experience. And she was just affirming me and reiterating how I've expressed an excellent work ethic all these years. And this was my very first time having this type of lack of support from leadership. Now, what I will say that I didn't say in the blog is that when I was able to talk to my boss about what was going on, he knew what was going on, and he did step it up. So I do think that there was some support in that regard, but he wasn't over the powers that be that ultimately wanted me out. So it was good to see him having that support and kind of reiterating that, yes, I'm not crazy. Like, these people are trying to get me out. However, he was playing the game himself. So he couldn't put his job on the line to jeopardize himself, in supporting me. I think walking away from that experience was eye-opening. It reminded me of other positions that I've been in where I was favored, where I did have supportive leadership, where I was adored, quote unquote. And even though I had those experiences from leadership, other people did not have those experiences. So, you can have an experience in your work environment where you're being supported, where people are opening doors for you, where they're all for you, but they may not be responding that way to your colleagues and to other people that you work with. So that was eye-opening. The other part of the blog, I talk about more personal toxic relationships. And I think once I wrote this post, I was able to see the parallels. I didn't even see the parallels before, but having been in toxic personal relationships where you're constantly criticized and there's psychological damage being done in your psyche, the bar is constantly being moved to people pleasing and meeting expectations and perfectionism, and you're just starting to question like your whole character and identity. Like the same things have happened in my own personal relationships that I've seen happen in toxic work environments. And, toxic work environments are still from people, right? So, and I didn't touch on this, and this is something that could happen in like a future girl talk. I'm kind of playing around with this topic as far as like toxic family members, dealing with toxic family members and relationships. Toxicity is toxicity. And it isn't until this season that I realized the healthy version of me that I've become. I've not always been this healthy. I have been the toxic person. And we all have a level of toxicity. But what I'm learning is that it's about the heart of a person to want to be healthier. It's about the heart of a person with their intentions. Are they intentionally trying to tear you down, oppress you, dehumanize you, all of those things? Or are they open to growth? Are they open to being a better version of themselves? That's what separates, quote unquote, the boys from the men, the toxic person from the unhealthy person who wants to be healthier. And as I'm coming upon my 40th birthday, it's happening, guys. The 40 is coming for me. But as I approach my 40th birthday, I'm reflecting on my life at this point and where I am. And I'm just a big reflector anyway, so that part isn't that big of a deal. But I'm just realizing like one of the things I'm grateful for is becoming a healthier version of myself. Like I'm glad that I didn't take the easy peasy path when it came to growth and when it came to healing. Healing is no joke, okay? I talk about my breakup when I ended a 4-year relationship right outside of college. And I talk about that in my first book, How to Overcome Heartbreak. And in that book, I give you steps on things that helped me. But it took a while. It took a long time. And so I can look back and I see this pattern in my own journey of making the hard choice now for the long-term reward, or for the reward that will not come speedily. And I attribute that to my ultimate level of maturity. And I cannot take credit, because for me, it always was about being spiritually led. I knew that I wanted the quick and dirty and easy, right? I wanted to stay in the unhealthy relationship. I didn't want to give up the love of my life at that time. But I knew God was leading me to let that go. And I also knew that it was ultimately for my good and that he was looking out for me and making that decision. So that's the part I guess I could take credit for, is heeding the voice of Holy Spirit. But again, he led me. I would not have chosen that except that I knew it would ultimately please him and it was for my good. I couldn't have imagined how much it was going to work for my good. I couldn't have thought 20 years from now, because it's been, oh my God, 20 years almost. It's been 20 years. I couldn't have thought, 20 years from now, you're going to have these accomplishments and these degrees and these businesses and da-da-da. And honestly, I am just getting started with the writing thing. But I couldn't have imagined the woman that I would become, character-wise, maturity-wise, accomplishment-wise. I only knew that I did trust God, and I thank God for that, because he really does set you up. Like, you could never imagine the path of life and what it entails and how it's for your greater good when you're making those hard choices now. So I say all that to say, if you find that you are in a toxic relationship, a toxic work environment, or you yourself have toxicity, my encouragement is seeking help. If you're in one of the first two that I listed, seeking help, setting boundaries, working on your self-esteem, your self-value, and your self-respect. I know for me, that's what I'm focusing on. That's what I focused on in the past. And that's what's helped me to develop into a non-toxic person. And I would also say, if you're discovering the toxicity yourself, like making those inner changes, a lot of our toxicity is stemming from childhood issues. We all have them, no matter what your childhood upbringing was. More than likely, a lot of your stuff is stemming from childhood. So dealing with that stuff, healing from the inside out, and not just covering it up, wearing a mask and keeping it moving, because it's going to come out. Okay. And usually it comes out to those closest to us. We end up hurting the ones closest to us. So those are my tidbits. I do give some resources in the blog. I also share about a really devastating story I came across. A friend shared it with me. The woman's name is Sophia Geraldo. Devastating. And I know Patrice Washington shared it on her podcast. And there's a link for the GoFundMe for Sophia. So Sophia, unfortunately, had a devastating incident with her estranged husband, who ran her over with his car with the children in the car. And this was a direct result of an abusive, toxic relationship. And she's not fighting for her life. Last I checked, there's a GoFundMe for their family. So if you're interested in reading more about that, the link is in my blog. You can listen to Patrice Washington's podcast and Redefining Wealth, and the GoFundMe, I think I already said, is in my blog. So at NicoleDMiller.com. So a heavy topic, but a needed one. And I wanted to share, as I'm learning things in my own journey, I wanted to share with my tribe, my community, my people, my audience or whatever. And because I know it's happening so much, and there's help and there's resources, and you don't have to stay in these situations. I know with work it can be tricky because you need to pay your bills. But there are ways to deal with those relationships by setting boundaries, looking for other work. For me, I did end up putting in my resignation, even though I was still trying to stick it out. But I knew God was like, girl, get out. The writing is on the wall, So it's really about people mistreating you. It's about people mistreating you, and you having a human right to have a voice, to have value. But it starts with you. You have to respect yourself. You have to have those values yourself for other people to see that. So hopefully that helps. I don't think I have any events coming up. I did shout out Ignite with Light. They have an event next Wednesday. So if you're a business owner and you're looking to connect and network, they have a network next week. But I think that's all for me right now. We are working on the website for Andy Miller Publishing. We're doing all the things with that. And of course, I have the book launch coming up that I am preparing for. So stay tuned for that if you're in the Cleveland area. I'll also have a virtual launch so my followers can participate. If you are not already subscribed to my email list, subscribe at NicoleDMiller.com. And I think that's it. So you guys will hear from me soon, and I look forward to you joining my next Word of the Day Wednesdays. Have a good evening, and talk to you later.